Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back with a banger. Random Access Memory, or RAM, is a fast, temporary computer storage device that allows temporary tasks to be written to it and performed instantaneously. RAM is used for tasks you are actively working on and windows you have open on your computer. The two types of RAM are DRAM, which can hold more data, and SRAM, which is faster and more efficient but can't store as much data. SRAM has better performance than DRAM, but DRAM is so much cheaper that it is the type used in nearly all desktop PCs. RAM runs on NAND Flash, meaning that data can be stored without drawing power. Beginning with capacity, I'll come right out and say it. You probably need 16 gigabytes of RAM, no more, no less. A 16 gigabyte kit is able to run games at maximum quality settings along with background tasks like Discord, Spotify, or Chrome. If you're video editing or doing any kind of CAD, graphic design, photo editing, code compilation, or other professional work, you should get a 32 gig kit. If you do need something higher than 16 gigs, you'll probably know already. So if you're unsure, I would generally stick with 16 gigs, but if you're not sure, leave a comment down below, I'll try to help you out. The number of clock cycles, or cycles per second, a RAM kit can perform is measured in megahertz, or MHz. The megahertz of your RAM kit correlates to how much data can be stored and transferred at one time. It's technically mega transfers. The megahertz is half of the mega transfers. Slow RAM can produce stutters in games. For DDR4 memory, 3600 megahertz is the sweet spot, and for DDR5, I would recommend probably 5200 megahertz, although you can get away with 4800 megahertz. Cache latency refers to the number of cycles it takes for the RAM to transport a piece of data from its module to the memory controller on the CPU, and then to the CPU core complex. Thus, the lower the cache latency, the better. It's often best to get the RAM kit with the highest frequency and the lowest cache latency at a certain capacity. It's also important to remember that DDR3 modules may have lower cache latencies than DDR4, but DDR4 is still faster because of vastly superior frequencies and technology. A RAM stick actually has 4 primary timings: cache latency, RAS to cache delay, which is the number of clock cycles needed to open the correct row of data from the module, row precharge, which is the number of clock cycles needed to close an incorrect row, and row active time, the number of clock cycles needed to close an incorrect row and then open the correct one. This is why you may see a kit labeled as 16, 20, 20, 38 for its cache latency, but in reality, only the 16 represents the cache latency, or TCL, while the other 3 are the TRCD, TRP, and TRAS. You may be inclined to get the cheapest CL16 RAM kit, but in reality, a 16, 18, 18, 38 kit is better than a 16, 20, 20, 38 kit. So be sure to look out for all the primary timings. By the way, I would recommend CL16 as the highest cache latency you should go for DDR4. CL14 is better, but way more expensive. RAM channels are the physical wires linking the RAM and the CPU and transmitting the actual data. The number of channels on your motherboard indicates how many RAM sticks are supported. If there are 4 RAM slots but your motherboard only supports dual channel, you can still use 4 sticks, but in dual channel mode. Each RAM stick has a 64-bit bus to the memory controller. For each channel, 64 bits can be read and written at once. With a quad channel motherboard and CPU, you'd want to use 4 RAM sticks since 256 bits of capacity are available to you. If you put 2 sticks in a quad channel board, you are not taking full advantage of the board's performance. Inversely, if you get a motherboard that supports dual channel, spending extra on 4 RAM sticks is also pointless. Doubling or quadrupling the memory bandwidth is actually highly beneficial for performance, so the more channels the better, generally speaking. For a dual channel setup, dual channel by the way is the norm, for a dual channel setup, you'll want to place 1 RAM stick in the first or second slot and the other in the third or fourth, usually slots 2 and 4, which indicates 1 in each channel. So consult your motherboard manual for the optimal RAM configuration. Everyone seems to talk about dual rank memory, but not dual bank memory, and others mix up the two. A memory rank is a block of data stored in memory chips that is 64 bits wide. Single rank RAM is generally when a RAM stick only has memory chips on one side of the PCB, while dual rank indicates double the memory chips and therefore double the bandwidth of one stick, which would be 128 bits per stick. Having a module with 2 or 4 ranks is like having 2 or 4 RAM sticks in one module. However, this is actually a bad thing. Some web and game servers can only deal with a certain number of ranks at once, so it's better to get 4 single rank 4 gigabyte DIMMs than to get one 16 gig single rank stick. On the other hand, a memory bank is a device bank is a device inside a RAM stick that increases RAM speed by decreasing the number of rows the memory controller has to open. It's all really complicated, but having more memory banks is better, while having more ranks is worse. Double data rate, or DDR, is a memory technology that transfers data twice as often as the antiquated synchronous dynamic random access memory, or SDRAM, that it is based on. Double data rate means that the memory transfers data twice per clock cycle. It overtook SDRAM in the 2000s thanks to its lower cost, lower voltage, and better efficiency. The modern RAM technologies, DDR4 and DDR5, are of course built on DDR. In AMD systems, the Infinity Fabric Clock, or FCLK, connects the CPU core complex to the CPU memory controller. The FCLK frequency should always be set to half of your RAM's rated speed. So if you have 3600 MHz RAM and a Ryzen system, set your FCLK to 1800 in the BIOS for maximum system stability, since your DDR RAM is technically running at half its rated speed in terms of megahertz, not megatransfers, but megahertz. It's important to note that Infinity Fabric is affected by silicon lottery, so some memory controllers can't push the FCLK past 2000 or even 1800 megahertz. As such, past 3733 megahertz, AMD automatically sets your FCLK to a 1:2 ratio instead of 1:1. This allows for RAM speeds over 4000 megahertz, but it increases latency. Over on Team Blue, all 11th and 12th gen CPUs have the same technology with the same general performance, but in BIOS setups for Intel boards, FCLK is instead called gears for the CPU Integrated Memory Controller, or IMC. Chips older than Rocket Lake, that aren't X series, or Xeon processors, use Intel's ring bus, or 2 ring buses connected by Intel's mesh topology. While the Infinity Fabric speed is directly linked to RAM speeds, the ring bus is not. Thus, the ring bus sees smaller performance gains from higher frequencies, because increasing frequency does not lead to faster communication between CPU core complexes, which isn't what Intel calls them, just what AMD calls them, and everyone calls them, honestly. That's what consumers call them. I'm not sure why Intel only supported up to 2933 or 3200 megahertz for so long, but I do know that the chips didn't benefit from higher frequencies as much because the memory controller was separate from the processing cores. Luckily, now both AMD and Intel support super fast RAM, so the days of the ring bus are behind us. T-topology is when traces for each channel of RAM are the same length. Daisy chaining is when traces go to the first slot, then continue to each subsequent slot. If all 4 slots are used, speeds may be slower with daisy chaining, but speeds would be faster with 2 sticks. The reason slots 2 and 4 are generally ideal for dual channel is because the traces end at the proper slots, 2 and 4, so they don't have to be reflected back to the CPU and cause increased latency. Check if your motherboard has T-topology or daisy chaining, then decide whether you should get 2 or 4 sticks. If it has T-topology, you should take advantage of 4 sticks. If it has daisy chaining, 2 sticks is the way to go. Remember, all this advice I'm giving you guys is retroactive. So the daisy chaining and T-topology stuff, you also have to consider whether your motherboard is quad channel or dual channel. The main question on everyone's mind right now is whether to upgrade to DDR5 memory. DDR5 sticks can hold more capacity due to larger capacity memory chips. Believe it or not, due to die stacking and having double the memory banks, DDR5 tops out at 2 terabytes per module, but average users can't buy sticks that large, so it doesn't really matter. Early DDR5 modules can only reach about 32 gigabytes, as of now anyway. DDR5 is much faster, with most kits being at least 4800 megahertz. DDR5 has 288 pins just like DDR4, but the notch has moved, so DDR5 does not fit in DDR4 slots. DDR5's increased bandwidth and burst length, as well as decreased voltage, bring improved efficiency over DDR4. In TechSpot's benchmark analysis, DDR5 only offered 2% on average gains in games across all resolutions with the 12900K, but the margin was above 10% in a few select titles. DDR5 seems like an obvious choice, but 32 gigs of DDR5 4800 CL38 sets you back $270, while 32 gigs of DDR4 3600 CL16 starts at $170. The DDR5 kit is obviously faster, but factor in the cost of a new motherboard and the choice becomes clear since the RAM is already more expensive. If you are building your first PC right now, consider DDR5 and Alder Lake. But seeing as AMD doesn't even support DDR5 yet, I would not upgrade if you already have a DDR4 kit. Wait for prices to come down for DDR5 in probably a year or so. In terms of RAM, you should pretty much always get standard modules. If you have CPU cooler clearance issues, get RAM with shorter heights like Corsair's Vengeance series, but some kits go even further. Very low profile, or VLP memory, is made for industrial and business applications, not the consumer market. But it's important to note that some green PCB no heat spreader kits of VLP memory can achieve consumer speeds like 3200 megahertz. If you do need VLP RAM, you know that you need VLP RAM, so for most of you, just get normal RAM. Even if you have an ITX system, Corsair Vengeance RAM can normally fit in there. Now it's time for some concrete kit recommendations if you don't want to research too much. If you're on a budget, consider the G.Skill Ripjaws 5 16 gigs 2x8 gig DDR4 3200 CL16 kit for $64. It's a 16, 18, 18, 38 kit from a reputable brand for under $70, so it's a good value. If you have more to spend but still want to be reasonable and get a good bargain, you could spring for the $87 G.Skill Ripjaws 5 16 gigs 2x8 gigs DDR4 3600 CL16 kit. The kit is the same as the previous one, but with a higher frequency and different timings besides the cast latency. Many kits are 16, 19, 19, 36 in this range, not 16, 18, 18, 38. If you have more to spend, check out the Kingston Fury Beast 32 gig 2x16 gig DDR5 5200 CL40 kit for $270. Generally reputable brands include Corsair, G.Skill, Team Group, Kingston/HyperX, Crucial, Patriot, Gigabyte/Aorus, Thermaltake, Silicon Power, and ADATA/XPG. For now, I would avoid new brands like Oloy, V-Color, Vaseki, and Festive. With that being said, happy ramming. Wait a minute, that sounds wrong. See you guys.